The Afghan-American Chamber of Commerce serves the interest of its members through numerous programs, advocates for a free and open market economy in Afghanistan, and endeavors to strengthen U.S.-Afghanistan economic relations. AACC's annual U.S.-Afghanistan Business Matchmaking Conference is the world's leading event for promotion of the private sector, business matchmaking, and investment in Afghanistan. AACC works to ensure that Afghanistan's economy and employment of the Afghan people remains a top priority for the U.S. and Afghan policymakers, and serves as a link between business and government to encourage progressive economic policies that will result in increased business, job creation, and investment between the U.S. and Afghanistan. We believe that peace and stability can only be achieved in Afghanistan through the success and growth of the private sector. It is the goal of AACC to promote the exchange of information and provide resources to its members through investment conferences, seminars, networking events, publications, and other avenues to stimulate U.S.-Afghanistan business and investment. The Afghan-American Chamber of Commerce, facilitating U.S.-Afghan business, investment, and trade ties.
Our next panel is Afghanistan Extractives and Industries, Mining and Independent Energy. I'd like to have Mr. Joe Young, Director for CLDP Program, U.S. Department of Commerce, to come and run this panel as the moderator.
Good morning. Distinguished guests from the United States and Afghanistan governments and private sector, thank you very much for being here this morning. It's an honor for my group, the Commercial Law Development Program, or CLDP, to be able to be here with this distinguished panel. CLDP is a government-to-government technical assistance provider in the commercial law area. We work across several sectors in Afghanistan. We're likely to assist in the EPZ work with the head of the ACAA, Shah Habibi. With respect to the mining sector, our primary government counterpart is MOMP. I think it was a little over a month ago that Her Excellency Acting Minister Nargis Nayan was here in Washington, D.C., and we're grateful to USAID, Greg Huger's team, the Embassy of Afghanistan, Ambassador Mohib, Fazilar, thank you again very much, and AACC, particularly Jeff Grieco, for making that visit successful. Whether it's coal, rare earths, copper, gold, I think everyone realizes that Afghanistan has significant resources that are very important to the growth and economic development of the country. It's great to follow up on that visit, to have this panel on the very first day, and in particular, Deputy Minister Sadat. I think we saw each other about a week ago in Kabul, so welcome to Washington, D.C. But we're grateful to have DM Sadat here to talk to us about major reforms with Afghanistan's mining sector, as well as new policies to promote private investment and summary of new investment opportunities. So I know we're behind on time, so I'd like to call Deputy Minister Sadat up right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. May I ask if you put my presentation? Yes, it's there. Thank you very much. Thanks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Allow me first of all to thank the organizers and sponsors of this event, and in particular ACC, for making this exciting event possible. And it's an honor to be invited in this event. I would be briefly talking, as Mr. Young mentioned, about some of reform agendas and policies that we have for the effective management and development of the sector, and some of the potential projects that we have already put for bidding and we are going to put for bidding. So, the first thing that I want to discuss is the roadmap that we have developed for the development of this sector. In fact, stability is one of the major concerns of all these investors that they want to invest in the extractive sector. Of the talks that I had in different platforms with the potential investors and with existing investors, they had concerns about the stability. And that stability was mostly about the stability about the legal frameworks that we have, the fiscal framework that we have for the development of the sectors, and overall management of the sector. So this roadmap, in fact, gives a clear vision for the next 7 years of the development of the sector and gives a strong sense of stability to the potential investors that they want to come and invest in the extractive sectors of Afghanistan. So this is this roadmap, in fact, encompasses all these major reform areas that we are envisaging to implement as part of the development of the sector, as well as the policies that we have and the reform agendas that we have to implement. Drawing from this broader framework of the development of the sector, we have devised another document, a strategic document, which we call it Reform Strategy, and this is mostly a document that focuses internally for the reform of the ministry, enabling the ministry to be able to act as an effective agent for the development of the sector. And that, in that we have put 5 pillars of reform, which are institutional reform and development, geological data acquisition and management, contract management and compliance, transparent and accountable governance, growth and enabling environment. Some of these I would be discussing them again in the next slides to come. The reforms that we have within the ministry, historically talking, has been involved in the production and actual extraction of the mines in Afghanistan, which we have inherited it from the past. We have now a reforms agenda in place to shift this role of the ministry from some level of production and regulation to pure policy making. And as part of this reform, we are taking out this regulatory function of the ministry and putting them in the form of independent authorities, like the one that we have with civil aviation, and ICT, the ATRA regulatory bodies. We have just finalized and enacted petroleum law, and this law allows the establishment of the Petroleum Authority, which is a regulatory body for the petroleum sector of Afghanistan. Similarly, we are working to extract the regulatory function of the minerals from the ministry and put them in the form of a regulatory body, an independent entity to manage and regulate the minerals sector of the extractive sector of Afghanistan. And the ministry would remain only and merely as a policy-making body to develop an overall strategic policies and documents for the strategic guidance of the sector, and would be acting as a parent body, as a parent ministry for these 2 new entities that will be born. Some of the main reform agenda with respect to the issuing contracts and giving licenses, as Excellency the President mentioned, in terms of making decision on major economic contracts, we are also utilizing the High Economic Council to issue new contracts, and that would be a platform that we would be also taking the new projects, new meaningful projects in that platform for approval. In the past, historically talking, an investor was coming to the ministry and saying that there is a mine in area X, and we want you to put that mine for tendering so we can apply for that. And so about 1,000 of these contracts that we have issued, we devised this approach, that an investor had come to us and was demanding that this mine in area X should be put for tender, and they were applying for those contracts. Despite the fact that we would actually, there was a competitive bidding process involved, but in almost 80% of these cases, the first applicant has been always the successful winner of that contract. So that was in fact questioning the way that we were handling this bidding process and the question of transparency and all that. And so now we have changed that approach, and what we do, the ministry, there is a committee that they would be looking into the identification of meaningful projects, and especially medium-sized projects. Those projects would be taken to the High Economic Council for approval, and then we would have a clear plan and a clear number of projects that would be put for tender on that particular year. And then we sequence those projects and we put them for tender, and there would be a transparent process in the bidding of those contracts and projects, as well as other areas of work of that. Security, the challenges that we have. Security is one of the major challenges that this sector and other sectors, economic sectors in Afghanistan faces. To tackle this challenge, we have devised certain mechanisms, and one mechanism has been establishment of a mining security committee chaired by a High Security Council, and consisted of senior representative from Ministry of Defense, from Ministry of Interior, from Ministry of Mines and Petroleum, and other relevant security agencies that they have representative there. So every major security challenge and issue would be taken to that platform under the supervision of the leadership of the Security Council, and they would be dealing with security issues related to the mining and extractive sector. And as on the top of this, there is a particular unit within the Ministry of Interior that we are leveling them up and putting more resources in that unit so they can be capable of ensuring security for the mining projects. On the top of that, to mitigate any problems with respect to the security of mining projects, we would be prioritizing only those contracts and those projects that those areas are perceived to be secure, or the government is capable of ensuring security in those areas. And so these are the strategies that we have devised, in fact, to make sure that the mining projects are safe and secure, and the investors have this necessary assurance that they can invest in the mining projects in Afghanistan. Community service delivery and environmental issues are also other challenges that we have devised policies and programs, and those are strongly reflected in both reform documents that we have, the roadmap for the extractive sector of Afghanistan, as well as the reform strategy that we have devised for the sector. Coming to the main point that most of our potential investors are interested to know about, and those are the potential projects that we have. In fact, in the mining sector, not only we have identified reform areas and devised reform strategies, but also we have identified priority commodities. So some of these priority commodities, you can see them here. In fact, some of this commodity was mentioned in the speech that Mr. Greco had. He brought up some of these commodities, and also His Excellency the President also mentioned some of these commodities as priority commodities that we have identified. Some of this, like the lithium, one is we perceive that not to be merely of an economic value, but it is also a strategic element as well as a strategic commodity, and we have envisaged to contract these commodities and commodities similar to this to our strategic partners. So which U.S. and potential U.S. investors are, in fact, those strategic partners that we welcome them and we persuade them and encourage them that they look seriously into these projects that we have in Afghanistan, starting with lithium, production of energy from gas, production of energy from coal, and other areas that they are interested to come and invest. The benefit that they would have, at this time to come and invest in Afghanistan is that they would be benefiting from a higher margin of profit. So the first comers always benefit from this fact that they would be having a higher margin of profit, plus the government would be heavily engaged in supporting and making sure that these projects that they want to engage are successful. And so some of the reasons I've listed in the last slide, some of the reasons that why investors should be coming and invest in Afghanistan. We have very competitive fiscal policies in terms of taxation, tax holidays that we have, a rate of royalty that we are envisaging to devise in this new regulation, fiscal regulations that we are developing, as well as the other incentives that we have created, including the fact that we also are geographically located in an area. There are growing demand and there are growing markets, and like China and India and other major markets in that area, that investors can actually sell their products to those markets. One other important reform strategy that I forgot to mention is these state-owned enterprises that we have. We have 4 state-owned enterprises currently that they are engaged in the production. In fact, through that, the government and the ministries, in fact, engaged in the production of the mines, the production in the extractive sector. We have listed that, and I'm sure that Mr. Stanley would be mentioning that as part of the World Bank program that they are developing, that we would be commercializing and corporatizing these state-owned enterprises very soon, and we have already identified strategies for doing such, starting from Afghan gas, going to the northern fertilizer plant that we have, as well as the coal enterprise that we have and the cement enterprise. The last, not the least thing to mention, that of these top priority commodities, we have already put 2 mid-size contracts for tender, and those are the cement projects. We have announced it about 5 days back. Those are on our website, the details, and we are asking for RFPs. We hope that the American companies get interest in that and express their interest in investing and bidding for those projects. These are the Samangan cement project and Herat cement project, which are very safe area to invest as well. And of course, there is a huge demand for cement. We have cement along with 10 other top priority commodities, or the commodities that we export from regional countries and neighboring countries. And so there is a huge demand for cement in Afghanistan. Coal is another thing that we would be soon advertising and putting that for tender. Talking with Mr. Ritter earlier, there are some potential American companies that they are interested to come and invest in the production of energy from coal. We welcome such initiative very much, as well as we encourage and welcome the investment in the production of energy from gas, and on the top of all that, the lithium, which is waiting for the American companies to come and invest. Thank you very much for the time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, DM Sadat. Our next speaker is Jack Medlin from USGS. Jack has a long history working in Afghanistan, particularly with the Afghan Geological Survey. We asked Jack to come up and discuss Afghanistan perspectives from the resource side, as well as the new USG partnership.
Thank you, Joe, and good afternoon. I want to say a few things in the beginning before we get into talking about the resourcing about USGS. We just celebrated our 138th birthday this past March, so we've been around a while. We are a group within the U.S. Department of the Interior, which is a land management agency or department rather than a security department. We are a small organization, about 9,000 people, and we are located basically in what people in downtown Washington call Hilton West, which is in Reston, Virginia. We are also a science agency, and what that means to us is that if we work on a project, we work very, very hard basically to publicly release all the data and information that we gather and that we interpret. And that is also true basically, as you will see, for Afghanistan. We're not a new kid on the block when it comes to Afghanistan. Our first work in Afghanistan started in 1952. And we were there until about 1973. That was mostly working toward the installation of stream gauges on the major stream systems within Afghanistan. We returned to Afghanistan in 2004. Our planned return basically was started in October of 2001. When our director said, I think that we can help rebuild a sister organization, the Afghan Geological Survey. So, moving forward to 2003, we received funding from USTDA to begin an oil and gas assessment of the northern part of the country. The results of that were released in March of 2006, and it's nothing more than a resource assessment, the first that had been done basically since the Soviets had departed. Our primary focus beyond oil and gas was also on rebuilding the Afghan Geological Survey. So the plan that we proposed at the time was to focus on rebuilding capacity in the agency with a focus basically on minerals, water, hazards, and so forth. One of the things that we discovered when we started work is that there was a huge amount of mineral data available within the Ministry of Mines and Industries at that time and within the Afghan Geological Survey. This was mostly old Soviet data that went back to the 50s, maybe the late 40s, but it was voluminous. Much of the old reports basically were deteriorating, the paper just falling apart. So we set about basically to compile all of the Soviet data, at that time basically Eastern Europe countries that had done a lot of work there. So we set about compiling the data and information. And when we talked about compiling, we were talking about making it digital. So as a consequence, I would guess that about 98% of the available geologic data in Afghanistan is now digital. It probably surpasses any of the neighboring countries in terms of geoscience data, in terms of mineral data. So I want to focus on minerals for the rest of this. We used the old Soviet data to compile the first assessment of what we call the preliminary assessment of the mineral resources of the country. That was completed and released in this building in November of 2007. It sat on bookshelves and so forth up until about 2009, when there was a renewed interest in Afghanistan minerals. The important thing to remember in this is that, a couple of things actually. When we talk about, well, since that time, when we talked about minerals, there are a couple of things that I have to disavow. USGS never said that there was $1 trillion worth of minerals in Afghanistan. There's a figure floating out there that it's actually 3 trillion, and I've heard a figure of 30 trillion. We don't do calculations of the value of minerals. What we do is we do mineral assessments using an internationally recognized method in which we basically estimate tonnages or ounces or kilograms or whatever of a particular commodity. So the other one that I get half a dozen emails or telephone calls a week on is USGS never said that Afghanistan would become the Saudi Arabia of lithium. There is no way you can connect that to us. So what I want to do is, this first slide is the Bandi Amir, the first national park in Afghanistan. It's a beautiful place. Could I have a second slide? And this is the most important slide, actually. What came out of our November 2007 assessment was the identity of areas that our assessment process indicated that were high priority mineral data areas. We started out, we call this our box map. We started out with 24 of those boxes. Within each one of those boxes, we're not saying that there's one mineral deposit, we're saying that there's probably multiple mineral deposits. So you're probably looking at a mineral district rather than a single mine, but it may be a single mine in some of them. The important thing to take away from this is that when we went into Afghanistan and started our mineral resource assessment, we assessed the metallic resources, the industrial mineral resources, and we touched a little bit on gemstones or precious stones. We didn't do very much with those, basically because of some security reasons. A lot of people ask us, and this block map basically includes metallic minerals, industrial minerals, and locations for gemstones or precious stones. So it's a full look at the mineral resource assessment as we look at them in USGS. We got a lot of questions on, okay, you used old Soviet data, and this is mostly what you see there, to do your assessment. And we said, yes, we do, but we basically we're able to field check most of these sites with our own geologists being on the ground and collecting samples and doing additional mapping. That confirmed basically that we were right in our assessment because we found what we should have found there. The second way we tried to confirm that we were correct is through remote sensing. We flew basically airborne gravity and magnetics and a hyperspectral mission, and these are remote sensing techniques. And when we analyzed the data from all those, it again confirmed that our assessment process had been correct. So we have continued to add what we call areas of interest. That's what we call the boxes. We're now up to 33. There are probably more with a little bit more field work, a little bit more study. So what we see here basically is the 32 or 33 that we think there is sufficient data on to move to the next step. In 2010, we were approached by the Department of Defense and they asked us whether or not, or how could they basically increase interest in the development of these mineral resources in these boxes. And we told them, we normally do not go beyond what you see, but if you want to increase the interest, then you need to go into each one of the boxes and develop detailed information and data. We did that, and we released that data basically over a period of about 2011 to 2014. So what is the additional data? It's where we use basically a geographic information system where we compiled more than 40 layers of critical data that most mining companies would have an interest in. And it includes the detailed geology, it includes remote sensing, Landsat, for example. It includes water, it includes population, it includes roads, it includes a layer of data on each one of those. And that's what we call our data packages. Those data packages were the supporting data for the tendering process that was carried out in 2012 and 13. So they were used, and I think they were used successfully. I think the bidders at that time found it useful in the preparation of their studies and their bidding. So, what are we doing there now? We were approached by USAID about a year ago and they asked us to come back in and start working in Afghanistan to do several, actually 5 things. Basically, one is to transfer all this digital data out of the USGS Eros Data Center. It actually belongs to Afghanistan, back to the Ministry of Mines and Petroleum and the Afghan Geological Survey. So over the next several years, we will be working with the Afghans to get them to the point where they can manage their own data and information. They can prepare their own tender packages and data packages and so forth. Another component is basically to begin to train Afghans to gather what we call baseline environmental data, because you need, once you start the mining process, you need some baseline data to measure change as a result of the mining. We are also working to compile a map of where illegal mining is going on. A lot of people say there's no mining going on in Afghanistan. I think everyone except the Afghans basically are mining in Afghanistan. So there's a lot of basically illegal mining going on, and we can use remote sensing techniques and so forth to identify where those are, and we can identify basically what is being mined. We will continue basically to do training of the Afghans basically in remote sensing techniques. Afghanistan is a very difficult country to get around in. Modern geological surveys are using remote sensing more and more and more to study their mineral resources or their geology. And we're also continuing to train them in geographic information systems so that they basically can also begin to put together packages of data to attract investment interest. So that's all I have. And if you have questions, maybe later I'll answer.
We're going to shift to the private sector now. So Mr. Hotak from Core Drillers, Inc.
So much for having me here. Distinguished member of Afghan-American Chamber of Commerce, Afghan and U.S. Government official, business professional, and other colleagues. A very good afternoon and a very good evening to those who are watching us online from Afghanistan. Mr. Dan Rater and Jeff Greco, thank you so much for having me here. It is very unfortunate that today we don't have our leadership who could better present mining opportunities and other important associated with that in Afghanistan. But I will start by introducing Investment Corp and Core Driller, and we'll move forward to talk about the potential of investment in Afghanistan. AACC, which stands for Investment Corp, is a wholly Afghan owned company. We are primarily headquartered in Kabul, Afghanistan, and we have offices in several countries, including Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, which directly or indirectly support our operation in Afghanistan. We invested in different sectors, including mining, construction, finance, logistics, agriculture, healthcare, through our separate subsidiary firms in several provinces of Afghanistan. Next slide, please. Core Driller, a subsidiary firm of AACC, is specifically working in the mining sector, and we already made a significant progress here. So far, we are a team of 104 highly skilled geologists, mineralogists, mining engineers, spatial and environmental specialists, policymakers, economists who share national and international expertise with a high level of education and experiences. The service we provide include exploration and development of mineral reserves, mining, processing, and expert consultation. Next slide, please. We did an extensive study of potential capacity of talc mineral in Afghanistan, and presently we are working on finalizing the contract with Afghan government. Our study shows almost 7 million tons of extractable talc potential, based on which we constructed a talc processing plant of 0.3 million tons of annual capacity, which will be used to provide the raw material for paint, ceramic, rubber products, cosmetic, paper, and plastic industry inside and outside Afghanistan. We are now working on a proposal with Afghan government to establish the Afghan Gypsum Business Hub, which shall act as a one-stop shop to formalize the gypsum business with other countries. Again, we made a significant progress in this part, and hopefully we'll have that unit established as soon as possible. Next slide, please. Based on our study, Afghanistan has huge potential of extractable coal, and at the same time we are a big consumer of cement, as other speakers talked about that. We have almost 5 to 7 million tons per year annual consumption, which are imported from other countries. To fulfill that need, we are currently working with Afghan government and other partners in and outside Afghanistan to help us invest on a 130 megawatt coal-fired plant and 1.1 million ton capacity cement plant in the near future. Again, for details of these opportunities, I will encourage our potential future partners to approach our central office in Kabul, Afghanistan. Next slide, please. As your local partner, we can offer lots of services as assistance. We either want to buy our products or be a delivery partner in providing those services together. We can help you to perform this study and prospection, adhere to local community support, facilitate your presence in the local market, and provide you with the local resources to successfully extract all those potential. In the next slide, I have a video of our talc plant that is recently constructed in Jalalabad province of Afghanistan, and I will ask our colleagues who can go ahead and proceed.
Welcome to Cordilleras Talc Processing Plant, located in Sheikh Misri Industrial Park, Jalalabad, Afghanistan. The plant is designed by Turkish, Chinese, and Afghan industrial designers and architects, while the construction is conducted by State Corps Engineering, which is a leading construction company in Afghanistan. An automatic and computerized control system is adopted using state-of-the-art in optical technology to complete talc value chain. Warehouse software is used for inventory of raw, segregated, and processed talc. The raw talc from mining site is offloaded into giant hooper of 120 metric tons capacity. The raw talc is then directed to flattened belt, where talc is manually segregated by skilled laborers. The crushed talc is passed from vibrating screen that divides talc into three various sizes of smaller than 1 centimeters, 1 to 3 centimeters, and above 3 centimeters. An advanced ultrafine mill is installed for processing and manufacturing. The fine and ultrafine talc powder ranges from 325 mesh to 2500 mesh. The fine and ultrafine talc is then packed within 20 and 25 kilograms bags. These bags are specially designed for long-distance transportations. The semi-processed talc is directed to an advanced optical technology to segregate talc based on color and chemical compositions. The segregated talc is then packed in Cordilleras branded flexible intermediary bulk container jumbo bags holding 1,000 kilogram talc. The warehouse is equipped with 2 fixed cranes and ventilation system. The warehouse has the minimum capacity of storing 7,000 metric tons of talc. The processed talc is loaded by forklift and fixed cranes into containers, which are ready for export to international markets. Thank you for our look through Cordilleras Talc Processing Plant in Sheikh Misri Industrial Park, Jalalabad, Afghanistan.
Thank you so much. مننكم أو دولوي أو أرام أو بعد أفغانستان بهيلا مننا.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hotak. Our last speaker, Michael Stanley from the World Bank.
Thank you so much, Joe. I'm conscious that we're running a bit late and I'm stand between you and lunch. Can you bring up my presentation, please? You don't have the presentation? Oh, it got emailed last night. Okay, it's going to go much faster then, isn't it? Without a presentation. Thank you so much. So I'm with the World Bank, and I'm the global lead for oil, gas, and mining. And we support governments around the world in development of the extractive industry sector. And first and foremost, I'm a donor. I'm up here on the stage, but there are other donors in the audience. And in any country, it takes a collective of donor support to really strengthen a sector, and we're very pleased to be working with Deputy Minister D.M. Sadat and the Minister of Mines and Petroleum. The first point that I was going to show you in my presentation was that Jack Medlin showed you a map of mineral resources, and I think a very important message on that map is that there's a diversity of mineral resources, and this is very important for any country, to not be overly focused on one commodity, but rather have a portfolio approach, because commodity prices do go up. Sometimes they come down. But if you have a diverse enough portfolio, you take out the ups and downs. And so you get overall growth for the country. And so I think that's an important message that we often share with the governments going forward. Every couple of years, we used to run a survey. This is important for AACC, that we would ask investors, what do you want in a country? If you're an investor and you're investing in oil, gas, or mining, what do you want? And they would always come back and say, first, we need to see a good resource. And I think Jack has mentioned, without the dollar amounts, Afghanistan has good resources, good mineral resources. But secondly, they then look to the government and they say, can the government regulate this sector? What does the law say? What are the policies? And who are the people in the institutions that will administer this sector? And that's vitally important. So that's where a donor like World Bank, USAID, we have CLDP. I see a lot of friends and family out here of the donor community. That's where we come in. So we help to strengthen that overall environment, the laws, the contracts, and the institutions that are so vitally important to ensure that we have good legal compliance between the operation and what the law says has to happen. We also focus quite a bit on individuals to make sure that we modernize skills. So Jack's a geologist. We often focus on modernizing skills of geologists and the scientists and the financial people that administer the sector. And so as one donor in Afghanistan, we've been quite involved with the Ministry of Mines to do this. And that's important for the industry because they need strong technical counterparts on the other side of the table to understand and appreciate the issues. If there's a metallurgical problem or there's a geological issue, you need people on the other side of the table that can work that space effectively. And then I want to go to a key point that Deputy Minister Sadat raised, which is the state-owned enterprises. I think that we have in some ways been a little bit neglectful of some of the state-owned enterprises. So you saw in the slide deck from the Ministry of Mines, there's the new Afghan Petroleum Authority. There will be an Afghan Mineral Authority. Those will be independent regulatory bodies and vitally important to make sure there's contractual compliance. But then we have these enterprises. We've got the Afghan Gas Enterprise. So if there is gas production, Afghan Gas Enterprise needs to transport that gas to the Mazar-e-Sharif today, and Shurbagan to the end markets. And so we need to strengthen and give more attention to the Afghan Gas Enterprise, Northern Coal, Northern Fertilizer, and I've forgotten the fourth.
Cement.
The cement industries, yes. I knew without my slide deck I would forget something. So we provide a lot of assistance to that. We also do a lot of assistance on geological data. And I can't underscore enough the importance of good, sound geological data to bring investors in. Most investors internationally have a very short attention span, and they wish to have very precise packaged geological data. If they're sitting in Melbourne, Australia, or London, they can Google and they can see all of the resource availability in Afghanistan and understand what that represents. So geodata is always vitally important. And lastly, as any donor, we try to build linkages between mining and infrastructure, the road system. If you establish a mine in a remote area, can we strengthen the road system, the water system? Is this an opportunity to have a commercial customer for power, right? So we build those linkages as best we can. And the last point that I'll leave you with was probably my best slide. It was a staircase that says that most mines around the world, big mines, start relatively small and they grow incrementally through time. And we call this the proof of concept approach. So that there's a small initial investment, some money is put, some venture capital is put at risk, a mine is developed, and then if it's fully compliant with the laws and the regulations of the country, and the investor is able to make money, they have basically offered what we call proof of concept. The whole legal, regulatory, financial system has worked. And then there's a second incremental investment, another, and another, and over a period of 20 years or 25 years, you find countries stand up very robust and very significant mineral industries. And I know 2 years ago when I spoke here, I cited Chile. If you look at the history of Chile, these very large copper mines started out with proof of concept investments. So as the donor community, we want to be sure that we can provide the technical expertise to help move these assets through a growth cycle and ensure that we have full regulatory, environmental, social, legal, fiscal, taxes, all of the compliance systems that we need to do that. So I am conscious of time, Joe. I'll stop there. I actually want to recognize many of the contributions that we're making together with yourselves. And so that was a presentation on behalf of World Bank, but I think I hopefully spoke for all of the donors. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Michael. We will get your PowerPoint and post it on our Google Docs that all the members of the attendees here will have full access to all the PowerPoints that you're seeing, and we'll make sure that his presentation is included in that. Are there any final questions for the mining panel? We do have, I want to note, a conference room right on the other side of the exhibit hall that is available if you'd like to have private meetings with any of our panelists who are here today and want to peel over to have a quick conversation in private. You're welcome to use that as well. If there's no questions, I'm just going to post one question, Joe, if we could. So right now, Joe, can you give us what is CLDP's role now in the mining sector, helping Afghanistan? Give us an idea of what your MOU with USAID is focused on the mining sector and extractive sector. And then maybe, Jack, just to give us a flavor, a lot of businessmen want to have access to some of the mining information that the U.S. government paid for, American people paid for. Is there a way that they can get access to a deeper set of either satellite imagery, mining information that's public, that they could access publicly, and how would they do that? But let me start with Joe.
Sure. So being the Commercial Law Development Program, CLDP, we do focus on legal and regulatory issues, and that can mean a lot of different things. But our main goal is to try to create, we heard level the playing field, but we do try to create a stronger environment for good international trade and business. A lot of times we start out with legislation, and we commend the MOMP on its work on the roadmap, and now we're looking at the minerals law, so the donor community is coalescing right now and working on providing comments for the minerals law draft. But we're capacity building too. We are partnering with Jack and his team on putting together curriculum and coursework for both the legal directorate side as well as the technical folks on the AGS side. And I can envision where we will be working separately sometimes and then completely together with USGS. So that's just a sampling of what we do, but we're commercial law, technical assistance, capacity building. Jack, I'll hand it over to you.
Very short. Jack, you can do it right from your seat. That's fine. Quick answer, though, because we got lunch waiting for everybody.
Your question is good. All the data and information that we have gathered, compiled on Afghanistan is available if you just go up on the internet and search USGS Afghanistan. A very large data site will come up and you can examine it. You can download all that information that you want. It also basically has the scanned materials that we took from the Ministry of Mines and AGS archival rooms. All that data is there, including the Russian reports in Russian. Some are in English. So everything that we have done in Afghanistan is on that site, and it's free.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank this panel for an extensive discussion on mining and extractives. We'll be talking more about investment opportunities in the mining sector in our follow-on panels today, tomorrow, et cetera. So let's give a big round of applause for our guests who did a great job. We have a wonderful buffet lunch waiting for you right in the external hallway here. Help yourself. We have about 45 minutes to 50 minutes for lunch, and then we'll open our next session with a keynote address by a senior ministerial advisor to the President of Afghanistan, Mr. Faruqi. Thank you.